China's Moonshot AI just dropped the biggest open-weight model the world has ever seen, 2.8 trillion parameters. And within hours, half of YouTube had already crowned it, the thing that finally dethroned GPT-5.6 and Fable 5. The hype is real, and it's loud. One breakdown is pulling over 1,000 views an hour. So let's do the thing the thumbnails won't. Actually read the benchmark it supposedly won. Because the benchmarks tell a more interesting story than China won. Here's exactly what Kimi K3 beats, and what it very much does not. Here's the map, what actually dropped and why the scale is genuinely a big deal. The one number the hype quietly skips. The single thing K3 wins outright, why you probably can't even run it, and the honest verdict on whether any of this should change what you use. Let's get into it.
Start with what's real, because plenty of it is. Yesterday, a Chinese lab called Moonshot AI released Kimi K3, and on raw scale, there is genuinely nothing else like it in the open-weight world. 2.8 trillion total parameters. That's roughly 3 times the size of their own previous model. And it is, by a wide margin, the largest open-weight model anyone has ever shipped. Open, meaning the weights are meant to be downloadable, not locked behind one company's API. Now, that trillion number needs one honest asterisk immediately, because it's the source of most of the confusion. K3 uses a mixture of experts' design. Think of it as 896 little specialist submodels, but only 16 of them switch on for any given token. So the model is enormous on paper, but only a slice of it actually runs at any moment. That's how you build something this big without the compute cost of running it fully lighting on fire. It's a clever architecture. It is not 2.8 trillion parameters all thinking at once, no matter how the headline reads. And here's the part that genuinely matters, beyond the spec sheet. This came out of a lab working under real hardware limits. The export controls that were supposed to keep the frontier out of reach. They built one of the largest models on Earth anyway, and then gave it away. That's the actual story. Open weights just took another big step toward the frontier. So if you stopped right there, the bull case writes itself. Biggest open model ever, built under sanctions, free to the world. That's a real headline. The problem is, that's not the headline everyone's running. The headline everyone's running is, it beats GPT 5.6 and Fable 5. And that's where we need to slow down and actually look. Beats. It's the whole pitch. So the fair thing to do is put K3 side by side with the models it supposedly beat. On a benchmark, nobody in this fight controls. An independent index that scores general intelligence across dozens of tasks. Here's the Independent Intelligence Index, top configuration for each. Fable 5 lands at 59.9. GPT 5.6 Sol, 58.9, and Kimi K3, 57.1. Read that again. On general intelligence, K3 comes in third, behind both of the models it's being sold as having dethroned. Not a tie, not close enough to call it, measurably behind, on the broad test of how smart the thing actually is. So the single most shared claim about this launch, the one on every thumbnail, is, on the numbers, just wrong. And here's the kicker. You don't even have to trust an outside benchmark. Moonshot itself, in its own launch write-up, says plainly that K3 sits behind Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Sol on overall performance. When the company that built the model tells you it isn't number one, it dethroned everyone, isn't just unproven. It's contradicted by the people who made it. And this is the trap the whole niche keeps falling into. A new model drops. One number somewhere looks spectacular, and it gets rounded up to most powerful AI ever, before anyone checks the boring average. The scoreboard that covers everything says third. That's not an attack on the model. It's just the receipt. So we've got a real gap between the story and the scoreboard, which raises the obvious question. If it's third overall, where did Beats Fable 5 even come from? Because it did come from somewhere. It's not invented. It's just one very specific place. Here it is. There's a blind arena where developers pit models head-to-head on one job. Build the front end, the actual buttons, layouts, and little web apps you see in a browser, and vote on which output is better, without knowing which model made it. On that specific board, Kimi K3 is number 1, 1679 points, and this one's not close. It clears Fable 5. It clears GPT 5.6 Sol with a 76% win rate against the field, and first place in 6 of the 7 front-end categories. That's a genuine, decisive, earned result. When people say it held its own, even excelled, on little HTML and JavaScript builds, They're not making it up. This is the board they're looking at. On this one high-value task, the open model really is at the very top. No asterisk needed. And it's worth being concrete about what winning here even means because it's not abstract. Picture the prompt that decides these votes. Build me a pricing page. Or make a working to-do app in a single file. Two models answer blind, and a developer picks the better one. The winner isn't the one with the fanciest reasoning. It's the one whose layout is cleaner, whose spacing looks intentional, whose buttons actually work when you click them. It's taste plus correctness, in a language everyone can see instantly, which is exactly why open models are catching up here first. And this is the mechanism people miss. Front-end code is the most abundant, most public code on Earth. The entire web is training data, and the output is instantly checkable. It either renders a clean page, or it doesn't. Abundant examples plus an easy way to grade yourself is the perfect recipe for a model to get genuinely great at something. So K3 winning front-end isn't a fluke. It's the niche most likely to fall to open weights first. And here's the part that actually matters, more than who won. The takeaway isn't most powerful, it's specialization. Open models have stopped trying to be the smartest at everything and started winning specific, valuable niches outright. Front-end generation is a big one. It's most of what a lot of people use these tools for all day. So the honest framing is narrow, not sweeping. K3 didn't take the crown. It took a seat at the very top of one specific table. And the best open model at the exact thing you happen to do is a real reason to care. It's just a completely different claim than beats GPT 5.6 and Fable 5, full stop. Add 3 words and the hype becomes true. Beats them at front-end code. That's the version that survives contact with the benchmark. The version without the 3 words is the mirage. And there's a second mirage hiding right behind it, the word open.
Here's where it breaks down for almost everyone watching. Open weights sounds like you can run this. For a model this size, that's a fantasy, and it's worth being blunt about why. At full precision, the weights are over a terabyte. Not a typo, a terabyte plus of model before you've loaded a single thing to actually run it. This is not something that lands on your laptop or your phone, no matter how many run it locally thumbnails you saw. Running K3 yourself means a small rack of serious hardware. Open here means a handful of labs and companies can host it, not you. And people will say, sure, but you can shrink models down, quantize them, trade a little quality for a lot less size. True, and it helps. But even heavily compressed, you're still talking about hundreds of gigabytes and a serious multi-GPU machine, the kind that costs more than a car. Compression turns impossible for anyone into possible for a well-funded team. It does not turn it into possible for you, tonight, on the thing you're watching this on. On top of that, at the moment, you can't even download it. The weights are still days away from release. So the open model that supposedly just changed everything is, right now, something most people can only touch through Moonshot's own servers. And those servers? The single most common complaint under every launch video is that they're overrun. Always busy, can't get a response. Which makes sense. A brand new, wildly hyped model on day one is going to get hammered. But it means the real-world experience for a lot of people isn't the most powerful AI ever. It's a loading spinner. So stack it up honestly. On the spec sheet, enormous, open, number 1 at front end. In practice, today, you can't download it, you can't realistically self-host it, and the hosted version is jammed. None of that makes it a bad model. It makes it an announcement, a very good one, that a lot of coverage is treating like a product you can already use. Those are not the same thing. There's one more thread worth pulling, and it comes from the developers themselves, not the critics. On one coding board, K3's score jumped from around 1190 to over 1660 in a single release, and the sharper commenters flagged it instantly. A leap that big, that fast, usually means one of two things. Either the model quietly learned from a stronger model's outputs, distillation, essentially studying the answer key from a smarter student, or it was tuned specifically to do well on the benchmark, which the community bluntly calls benchmaxing, optimizing for the score instead of the skill the score is supposed to measure. Now, to be fair, we can't prove which it is, and a big jump alone isn't a crime. Models do genuinely leap between versions, but it's the exact pattern you'd want to be skeptical of, and the fact that experienced developers looked at the number and immediately said, "That's too clean," tells you something. When the benchmark leaps but the general intelligence average still lands third, the simplest read is, the model got very good at the tests and a bit less good at everything the tests don't cover. So this isn't a "the model is fake" take,
A genuinely strong model and some aggressive test tuning can absolutely live in the same release. The honest position is to hold both, real front-end ability and a leaderboard number you should trust a little less than the marketing wants you to.
So if K3 didn't take the crown, does any of this actually worry the closed labs? A little, but not for the reason the thumbnails think. GPT-5.6 and Fable 5 are still ahead on the broad measure. Their moat on general intelligence is intact, for now. The pressure is narrower and sneakier than "we lost the lead." It's that a free model is now matching the paid frontier on the exact tasks a huge number of people actually pay for every day. Nobody's canceling their subscription because an open model is third on a reasoning benchmark. But the free thing builds my web pages just as well. That's the kind of sentence that quietly moves money. That's the real competitive story. Not one leaderboard flipping, the frontier getting carved up task by task, with open weights taking the high-volume, easy-to-verify pieces off the table. The closed labs keep the hardest reasoning. They slowly lose the everyday coding. And that trade happens one specialized model at a time, exactly like this one. So the honest worry for the big labs isn't Kimi K3. It's that there'll be 10 more like it, each winning one more column. So let's bring it home. 4 things to actually remember about Kimi K3. 1. The scale is real and it genuinely matters. The largest open weight model ever, built under hardware limits that were supposed to prevent exactly this. That's a real milestone for OpenAI. 2. It did not dethrone GPT-5.6 or Fable 5. On the Independent Intelligence Index, it comes in third, behind both. The crown is the mirage. 3. It does win one thing outright, front-end coding, in blind developer preference. If that's your daily work, this is genuinely the best open option, and that's the real reason to watch it. 4. And open does not mean yours yet. The weights aren't even out. It's over a terabyte, and the hosted servers are drowning. Today, it's an announcement, not a tool on your machine. So the verdict: Kimi K3 is a genuinely great open model, wearing a crown it didn't earn. The real signal here isn't China won, it's specialization. Open models are now good enough to win specific, high-value niches outright, even if they're still third at everything on average. That's the shift worth tracking. Not the leaderboard, the pattern. And should any of it change what you use right now? For almost everyone, no. You can't run it, and it's third on the broad measure that matters most. The one exception: if you live in front-end code and you're willing to wait for the weights, put it on your list. For everyone else, the useful takeaway is the pattern, not the download. The frontier keeps leaking into the open, one oversold headline at a time. And the real story is always one benchmark deeper than the thumbnail. That's the loop. We'll keep reading the fine print so you don't have to. Stay in the loop.